Hello, everyone. Hey there. Happy Wednesday. Hope everybody's having a great week. I am so excited for today's member workshop here in the Badass Moneymakers. This topic is particular interest to me because I love a good budget. So for folks who maybe didn't see, our topic this month is how to create or how to craft a business budget that is actually useful, that works for your business, that you'll stick to. And I want to actually talk about that stick to piece as we go through, because the way I think about budgets in my business, I don't actually think you always have to stick to them, but we'll talk about that. You may hear my dogs. My dogs are, hey, Mackenzie, thanks for being here. And if you're here live, let me know in the comments. I always love to know who's here. My dogs are nuts this week. So we got a new dog last week. Her name is Eden. We've changed her name to Edith. We're calling her Edie. And she's lovely and adorable, and I'm absolutely in love with her. But she riles the other one up like it's nobody's business. So anytime anybody walks by my house or someone comes delivers a package, whew. So I've got them upstairs in my bedroom right now. I know. I'm glad you do like dogs. Thank you. It's so distracting, and I'm hearing barking in my head all day. So we're working with her to help her not feel the need to bark every time. So yeah, definitely. I'll definitely send. I will definitely get you dog videos and dog pictures. I promise those are coming. And it occurred to me. Let me just make sure real fast before I dive into the training that everything looks good. I always want to check that. That is not the right group. What are we doing today? We are doing this. And so far, so good. Hold on. Oh, hey, Jenna. Welcome. Thanks for being here. You're listening to, Mackenzie's listening to the trash men outside, so she can't even hear the pops. Well, they're quiet now, but I feel your pain on the trash. Okay. Let's dive in. Now, I don't actually have any slides for today because I wanted this to really be a working, kind of like a working workshop. I mean, when we call it a workshop, that's generally what we want to do. I'm going to go ahead. Everyone should have a copy or should have access to this budget worksheet that I'm going to walk us through today. It's in your membership, but if you don't have a copy, I am going to drop the link over here on Facebook. Give me a hot second to do this. I'm going to drop the link over here on Facebook. It is view only, so you're going to have to make your own copy. Let's see, why haven't I got it yet? There we go. But again, this is in your member portal. And real fast on the member portal, I know I said this, I think on our money meeting or one of the Q&As recently. We are so flipping close to being able to get you on the new member portal. We hit some snags. I'm very, very sorry and frankly embarrassed that it's taken us this long. But once you get on the new member portal, everything will be wonderful and amazing. And there will be no glitches, right? But you should have access to the budget tracker on the old portal as well. So it was where I was going with that. So I just dropped the link. Hopefully everybody can see that and can click on that. The idea behind creating a budget that works for you, and I want to talk a little bit about the process in terms of like timing of creating a budget and what I do in my business, and then we'll actually dive into the budget tracker, and I want to walk you through it, and I want to kind of share some things. But as I'm going through any of this, please, please, please put your questions in the comments, because that's the only way I can know what doesn't make sense, what you're stuck on, and I can help you through it. So let me tell you a little bit about the budgeting process in my own business. Now, this is, I suppose in theory, this is what I recommend, but I also always want to caveat this stuff by saying you need to create a process that works for your business. Everyone's business is a little bit different. So if my process doesn't feel right for you, let's talk about how we can maybe tweak that. Come to one of the money meetings and let's chat about that. Or feel free to drop a comment in the comments. So in my business, generally about right now, so October of the year, I start to think about and I start to put together next year's budget. Now, the first time I did this, I started with a completely blank template. But of course, every year now that I've been doing this for a few years, I essentially roll forward my budget. And what that means is I basically make a copy of last year's budget and I update the year and a few other things. And then I actually dive in and look at what I did last year. So you'll see in the budget tracker that I've given you, for every single month, there's a column for the budget and a column for the actual so that you can compare the two. So when I'm doing this process, I'm looking back at the last year. So when I'm actually starting the process in October, I'm looking at the year I'm currently in, to be clear. And I'm looking to see where I was on track with my budget and where I wasn't. And I'm not doing this to shame myself or feel bad or anything like that. If I was off track, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that I need to tweak something in my budget. So that's one of the first things I do is I look at that and I say, okay, what's going on there? The next thing I do is I think about what changes I want to make in the new year that maybe have nothing to do with my results in the past, but just things are changing. I'll give you a great example. Now that we, in theory, can travel again, we're not quite there, but hoping for 2022, I'm blocking out big chunks of time to travel in 2022. That's going to change when my revenues come in, because there will literally be weeks where I am not going to be around. Now, I've built up my business in a way that money actually still comes in even when I'm not here. But I also know that during those weeks, I'm not going to be able to hop on sales calls. I'm not going to be following up on, client proposals. I'm not going to be going live and pitching different things. So that's something I'm going to build into next year's budget, because I know that that's going to be different. Another example of this would be if you're pregnant and you're going to go on maternity leave, that's going to need to be built in there. If you're hiring people, you want to make sure that gets built in. I just hired 2 more employees for my team, which is incredible. And I hope to, I want them to be here with me next year. That's definitely happening. But I hope to increase them to full-time next year. So that gets built into that budget. So that's that second piece of it is, I look and say, okay, what do I want to do differently next year? And then the third piece I do is I say, okay, given what I know about how I've done so far this current year and how that might affect what I'm going to do next year, and then given what I want to do next year that's different, what do I need to do to my budget to make it work? And I always say that your budget should be treated like a roadmap to get to your goals. So if your goal next year is to hit 6 figures, then you want to use your budget to design how you're going to get to 6 figures. If your goal is to hit 7 figures, same thing. How are you going to get there? But the other thing I always say, and this goes back to the point I was making a few minutes ago about how sticking to your budget is important, but it's not everything. Your budget is a roadmap. It's not the only way you can get there. Much like if you look at an actual map, I know we haven't had maps for years, but if you look at an actual map, there's a bunch of different ways you can get there, right? I suppose the modern day equivalent would be if you look at your GPS app, it gives you route options, right? That's really what a budget can be. So when we sit down and we design it, at the end of the year going into the next year, we're thinking about, well, what is the ideal path or what is the likely path to get to our goal? But as things change, things come up, we want to do things differently. We can adjust that budget. We can take a different route to still get to those goals. So I'm thinking about that as I'm building out that budget. Okay, here's my goal. How can I hit it? But I'm also recognizing that there's not just one way to hit that goal. And so I know as I go through my year, I may end up making changes or adjustments. I made a lot of adjustments in 2021. I'm not quite going to hit my goal, but I had a very, very, very high stretch goal for 2021, and we're getting pretty damn close. So what's cool about that is I made a lot of adjustments in 2021, but having my budget in having the budget tool in place allowed me, as I wanted to make adjustments, to see what would happen if I made those adjustments so that I could still make sure we were going to hit our goals this year. Hopefully that makes sense so far. I know that was kind of a lot of talking, but that's my process for my budget. So I started in October. I've literally, this week, I literally just started my 2022 budget template. And what I will typically do, and one other thing I want to mention, so I roll over my budget, but I also look at my next year's budget initially on an annual basis. So I don't break it down into months yet. When I'm first doing this work in October, I think about, okay, what are my expenses going to be next year? What are the revenue goals I want to hit? I do it on an annual basis. Once I've got that super comfortable, then, and this is usually about November when this happens, then I sit down and I break it out month by month. What does this look like? And the month by month thing is really important because if you do launches or if you have folks on payment plans, your annual numbers might look really good. But if you don't do that launch until August, you may not have any cash coming in January through July. And so all of a sudden you're in a real cash pinch if you're not looking at those numbers on a month by month basis. So that's why I make sure to do that second step as well. The budget template I gave you is month by month, so it forces you to do that. But I will literally just, and you can create another tab in the budget template to do this. I will literally just write, okay, what are my expenses for 2022 on an annual basis? What do my revenues need to be to cover those at a minimum? It doesn't mean that that's going to be my final goal, but at a minimum. And then I build that out. So hopefully that makes sense. I want to dive into the budget. But before I do, I want to say one more thing about the budget process. So I create this. So October I started, I'm looking at it very high level annual. Then I'm looking at, how I did kind of this year budget to actual and what adjustments I need to make. If I was always underestimating how much my Facebook ads would cost, then I'd want to make sure to build in more buffer for my Facebook ads next year. If I was always underestimating how many people were going to sign up in my membership funnel every month, then I might want to adjust for that. So that's that first step. Then that second step is thinking about those changes I want to make in 2022. So if I'm hiring or if I'm going on a maternity leave or whatever it may be, and then adjusting my numbers there. And then that third step is really looking at, okay, given all those changes I've just made, what numbers do I need to hit? What does my budget need to look like to make this a good year? And then once I've done all that, then I'm going to sit down and break it out into those months. So those first 3 steps, I generally try to do in October, a little bit into November. Actually breaking it down into the monthly stuff is kind of November into very early December. And then I try to sit with it. I sit with it and say, does this feel good? But by the time, at least in my business, this is why I said every business is different. By the time we go into December is our biggest promo month of the year because it's when we open up spots for our annual tax prep package. So by the time we go into December, we already really have our budget numbers finalized because at that point we have to know how many seats can we open up? What's our goal for that December promo? So that's my process. Now, once we get into the new year, every single month, and in fact, twice a month when I do my money meetings, I'm opening up that budget. I'm dropping my actual numbers in to see where I am budget to actual, both for the month and also year to date. And I'm looking at that budget. I'm looking at, well, are we on track to hit our revenue goal for the month and the year? Are we overspending? Are we underspending? Where do we need to make adjustments? I do not believe that once you set your budget, you can't touch it again. I'm okay adjusting your budget as you go through the year because things change. You might decide to scrap a program and start something new. You might decide to hire when you weren't expecting to, and you might decide to make your team smaller and you weren't expecting to. All of these things can happen. So as you're going through the year, I think it's okay to adjust that budget. What I want you to keep your sight on, though, is making sure that every time we adjust our budget, we're doing so in a way that still allows us to hit our goals. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. All right, let's dive into the actual budget tracker. And let me know in the comments if you'll have any questions. Sorry, my eye's doing a funny thing. I feel like I think it's the light. Every time I do a live, my eye bugs me. Okay, let me turn my do not disturb on so that y'all don't see the text from my husband. Okay, cool. Business budget tracker template. So this is what you should see if you click on the link that I put in the chat. Or you might, yeah, Mackenzie said, I'm putting this up on the screen. This is too good not to share. Or you might raise your prices. That's exactly right, Mackenzie. And I want to, I'm really glad you said that because I really want to stress that a lot of the work I do with my CFO clients during the year is looking at their budget. And if something is off from where we thought we would be, that is absolutely one of the things we're talking about, raising our prices. And it's not just because, oh, shoot, we need more money, let's raise our prices. It's because if something is off on the budget consistently, that could be a good indicator that we're not charging enough. If the expenses to run the business are more than we thought they would be, that could be a good indicator that we're not charging enough coming into the business to cover those expenses. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes it might just be that you maybe don't do such a great job of managing your expenses, and there are some things that could be cut. But more often than not, it's because you're not actually charging enough to cover the expenses that you need to have. So, Mackenzie, thank you for that. That was an awesome comment. Okay, so this is, I don't like this black, ugly background. hold on. That's really just gonna, better, even better. I'm gonna stick with this. I'm gonna stick with teal. All right. So this is our business budget tracker. This is what you'll see when you open it. And if you're not familiar with Google, all you need to do, and in fact, it should prompt you when you click on the link, but it should say, do you want to create another copy? Yes. Worst case, just come in here, click make a copy. Don't edit this. You shouldn't be able to anyway, but in case you get an editable link, don't edit it. Every single month in this business budget tracker has 3 columns. It has your budget column, it has your actual column, and it has your over under column. Okay. So, for example, if I budgeted $1,000 in January, we only did $750. You're under $250, and it works the same way. The over under column is formula driven. I wouldn't change that. Nothing is locked down in this, by the way. I don't lock down my spreadsheets anymore because I found that if I lock them down, something can break and then it never works. The flip side of it is if I don't lock it down, then y'all could maybe break it. But worst case, if you break it, you can always come back and grab another copy of the template. So just try not to change anything in that over under column. So every month has these 3 columns. Now, quick little tip here. If you want to just see a summary, at the top here, you'll see these little boxes. If you click that, it's going to consolidate each month section, and it's just going to show you your over under. So notice how February is closed. If I click it, it opens February. You can also actually, you know what, Google Drive is kind of funny. You used to be able to do all of them at once. I don't think they let you do that anymore. So never mind. Ignore me on that. The first thing, well, actually, before I tell you that, the next thing I want to show you about this is there are 2 main sections. There's the revenue section and the operating expenses section. You'll notice I don't have a cost of goods sold section here. For anyone who makes products, you're familiar with this term, cost of goods sold. I didn't build that into this spreadsheet. This is not meant to be an accounting system. This is meant to be a budget. So if you have cost of goods sold, just go ahead and throw them here under OpEx. These are all generic default titles. So you can come in here. Again, everything's editable and you can type in, whatever your different revenue streams are. You can break them out into as much detail as you want, or you can do no detail and have everything go into one bucket. For my budget, I like to do more detail because I like to break out how many people are going to do tax prep only, how many people are going to do the annual tax prep package, how many for CFO, for coaching, for membership, and so on and so on. That's really helpful to me as I'm both figuring out how many people we need to hit our goals, but also every month when we're trying to figure out, what our goals are for the month and if where we are in relation to them, it's really helpful to be able to break it out and say, oh, we only need 5 more people in the membership this month to hit our goals. So I like having that level of detail. It's entirely up to you. With operating expense, you don't have to be super detailed if you don't want to. I've got a category for technology. That's everything like StreamYard that I'm coming to you on, or Zoom, or Kajabi, or all those software tools I have. I don't get super in the weeds on that. I just come up with some general categories. I've got a category for my contractors. I've got a category for my team. I've got a category for advertising. Those are kind of my general categories. So yeah, that's all I want to say there. Then, excuse me, coming down here to this next section. Now, this next section is a next level component of this budget. And hopefully this doesn't overwhelm you. If it does, you could literally come in here and delete these rows, and this profit before taxes can just live as your number. Okay, so if this section overwhelms you, and I'll explain it in a second, but if this section overwhelms you, you don't have to use it. The purpose of this section, though, is to help you understand what amounts should be set aside for taxes and what amounts should be set aside for savings. Now, if you're a CFO client of mine, we build this out even more. We make this really specific to your exact situation and lots of things. But this is meant to kind of serve everybody. And so I would love for you to start trying to use this feature if you can. I'm going to show you exactly how to do it when we start putting some numbers into this budget. But this feature will really help you to understand how much you've got to set aside for taxes and how much for savings. Now, these white cells are where you put the numbers. So if you figure out you need to have 15% for taxes and let's say 10% for savings, you put those in there and it's going to use that number to calculate. And then this line here, this net profit line, is basically your profit before taxes minus your savings, and getting down to the end. Now, I will say this net profit line is a little deceiving because you can't deduct excuse me, your taxes from, taxes are not a business expense, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. That's too much for today, so don't worry too much about that. If we come down to the very end of this spreadsheet, you'll notice 3 columns: annual budget, annual actual, and then over under. This will help you also see, so you've got each month, this is going to help you see on an annual basis where you're at. I highly recommend, in case this wasn't completely obvious, I highly recommend when you sit down and populate this, that you populate the budget numbers for every single month, so that when you start the year, you can see what your annual budgeted amounts are. Your actual amounts aren't going to populate until you put numbers in, until you have actual numbers to put in. But I'm going to show you a trick that sometimes I use if I want to see how close I am to hitting my annual budget or not. So we'll get there in a minute. Let's start to actually fill this out. So I'm going to make this super easy just for the sake of time, and I want to make sure that we can get to questions if folks have questions. But let's just say that we budget, we're going to do $5,000 every single month in consulting income, and we're going to leave this super simple. We're going to say advertising is $1,000, or maybe like it's $750. Our team is $2,250, and we're going to spend $500 on like office supplies, subscriptions, things like that every single month. And again, I'm going to make this super easy. I got to open these because I'm just going to make it literally the same thing every single month. I'm not suggesting you do that necessarily, but for the sake of this exercise, I just want to get some numbers in here so we can start playing around with them. And oops, nope, I went too far. And as you're, one of the questions I get a lot when we're doing budgeting is folks will say, well, how do I know? You know, I don't know exactly what I'm going to bring in every single month. And the point is, yeah, you don't know. But this is a best guess exercise. And so what I love about doing this budget, my package of marshmallows has just been delivered. I have no clue how we've ordered marshmallows, but, and also something else. What I love about doing this budget is it forces you, in a good way, it forces you to think through when you're going to promote things and how you're going to promote them. Because when you sit down and you have to actually put numbers in each month, I'm going to give you a great example. Let's look at April. Okay. April for me is a very, very, very hectic month. Very hectic. April 15th is the tax deadline. The first 2 weeks, we are just, we are finishing tax returns. We are not doing anything else. I usually take the last 2 weeks off, and there's 4 weeks in April. So if I sat down and I said, I'm going to make $5,000 in April, I would actually need to sit there and say, well, hold on. Can I do that? And how am I going to do it? Because if the first 2 weeks, all I'm doing is serving clients and I'm not out there selling, and then the second 2 weeks, I'm completely out of the office, it doesn't mean I can't make $5,000, but it means I got to think about how I'm going to do it. And it means I've got to prepare for how I'm going to do it, because I can't just show up and have it be April 1st and then think I'm going to be able to get on enough sales calls to make $5,000 if all of a sudden I realize, well, hold on, my time is already blocked out. So that's what I love about this exercise, is it really forces you to think about when that revenue is going to come in and how you're going to make it come in. Does that make sense for everyone, hopefully? Okay, so let me make sure my number, I got everything in here. Perfect. So my annual budget, $60,000 of revenues coming in. And let me just go ahead and throw my expenses. Nope, not there. Over here, just so we have, again, some numbers to work with. I also just realized I'm doing this in the template. I meant to make a copy. I didn't listen to my own rule. So hopefully folks have already downloaded it. For anyone who's watching this on replay, I'll clear these numbers out when we're done with this workshop. Okay, so $60,000 is my annual budget coming in, $42,000 of expenses going out. That gives me a profit of $18,000 before I get into taxes or savings or anything like that. And I don't actually know why it's not calculating these numbers, but I will look at that. Something, we've already broken something. I'm just kidding. I don't know why it's not actually. I will figure that. Oh, I know why. Hold on. We're going to fix this right now because it's better to fix things. I don't know why that wasn't linked, but that is my bad. So let me get this in here super fast so that it works. And I'm not going to do a number for savings right now because I don't want to have to fix that one now, but I will fix it later. Okay. So 18,000 in profits. We're going to set 2,700 aside for taxes based on that 15% tax rate. That's probably a little low, but will work for now. Leaving us with a net profit of $15,300. That's our budget. Super cool, right? So now we're going to go into next year and we're going to say, okay, great. When I sit down and do my money meeting in January, it's January 15th, I'm going to sit here and say, okay, my goal is $5,000 for the month. I've done 2,700 so far. Cool, right? And okay, I said we were going to spend $750 in advertising. I've done 500. I've spent 1,200 on my team, and I've spent $250 on office supplies. And this is the 15th of the month in my example. So we're halfway through the month. What's great is I can look at this and say, okay, we're halfway through the month. I'm more than halfway through my revenue goal. I only need to do another 2,300 to hit my goal for the month. Down here, we're a little more than halfway through our expenses. Sometimes that happens because sometimes your expenses don't always perfectly align throughout the month. So you might have more expenses that fall in the first half of the month anyway. That's okay. You'll learn that if you do, and you'll know that when you're doing this analysis. But I'll look at this and say, okay, we're halfway through the month, and I've already spent 2/3 of my advertising budget. That tells me that my advertising budget is either too low, or maybe I need to scale it back a little bit so we don't exceed it for the month. Either decision is fine. If I decide I'm going to increase that advertising budget, then I can either just change it, but then I'm going to want to, let me rephrase. I can either just change it and accept the revised annual result that it gives me because I'm spending more, or the better choice, in my opinion, is I can change it and then say, well, where else am I going to make adjustments? So maybe I'm going to move it to $1,000 a month, but maybe I'm actually going to increase my revenue goal and say, if I'm going to bump up $250 a month, then I want to make sure I get that money back if I'm going to do that extra advertising. Okay, so it gives you the data to think these things through. Same thing with team. Here I'm a little bit more than halfway through, but maybe that's just because of the when people get paid. Office supplies, I'm exactly 50% of the way through, doing great there. Okay, and so then you come down here and you see, well, my goal or my budgeted profit for the month was $1,500. I'm at $750. I'm doing great. I'm a little ahead on my revenues, a little behind on my expenses, but I'm actually exactly halfway to my profit goal for the month. So I'm doing great. Let's see what else. I wanted to show you the trick. So what happens is, let me go down here to the end to our summary, our annual columns. So annual budget, $60K, right? But the problem is if you only fill in the, if you leave the actual columns blank until you have actual numbers, then when you look at the annual actual, it's only going to show you the actual amounts you've done year to date. Some people like this view. They like to be able to say, okay, it's January 15th and I've brought in $2,700 in revenues year to date. That's the number they want to see. Other people would prefer to not see the 2,700, but to see what their annual actual numbers will be if they hit their budget every single other month. So what I mean by this is, let me show you. So right now we're just seeing 2,700. What's challenging about this view is it doesn't really help you understand how on track you are to your annual goal, right? Because you're like, okay, 2,700, but what about all the other months? I don't know how those factor in. Am I on budget, off budget? I don't know. That's too complicated. So what some people will do, and this is entirely up to you, if this makes sense to you, do it. If it doesn't, earmuffs, don't do it, is for every other month that they haven't gotten to yet, so we're in January, so it's all the other months, they will literally copy over. I'm just going to do this. They will literally copy their budgeted numbers. And I'll show you why in a second. And by the way, what I tell people, if you're going to do this, highlight these actual amounts in yellow or some color, just so that you know these aren't the actual numbers, they're just placeholders, okay? But the reason why people will do this is now when they look at that actual column, let's say we're at the end of January and we only did the 2,700 in revenues. Now when they're looking at that actual column, they'll say, oh, okay, so actually if I hit my budgeted numbers for every other period in the rest of the year, I'm going to be at 57,700 for the year, not the 60K I want to be at. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. But some people prefer seeing this view of it because this shows them what it will look like if they hit that budget for the rest of the year. And then the way you do this is, again, you're highlighting your placeholder numbers in yellow, is once you actually get to that month, then you update the numbers for the actual numbers. But that's an option for folks as well. I want to pause just for a few minutes and make sure. Okay, perfect. So Mackenzie says super helpful, makes sense, great. Any questions so far on the budget stuff? I'm gonna give it. I know there's always a lag, so I'm just gonna be quiet for a few seconds in case folks have questions. I want to make sure. I want to make sure I get all the questions answered. I know we've got a few people watching. There are a couple folks in the Facebook group, and then a few folks I think watching over on YouTube. So in theory, I should be able to see your questions in both places, but I'm going to pop up YouTube right now just in case. I've already got Facebook open. So let me know if you've got any questions so far. Let's see. I didn't actually have this up before. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. So hopefully that means folks don't have any and not that you are just furiously scrambling to write your question before I start talking again. Cool. All right. So what else did I want to show you? There was some other stuff I wanted to show you, but now I've forgotten. Let me think about this. I already talked about the process for every month. Let's talk a little bit about what the process looks like if you do decide to change your budget, because I think this is the kind of thing that throws a lot of people off. Because for so long, I think anytime anyone hears anyone talk about budgets, it's always like, you got to set the budget, you got to put in, set in stone, and it's the budget, whatever. I very much see budgets as a fluid thing. And I've mentioned this a couple of times, but for me, what isn't fluid are my annual goals. So in this example, sorry to keep scrolling, I know that's probably annoying to watch. In this example, I've set this goal of 60K of revenues, but actually more importantly, I've set this goal of 18K of profits. Okay. And I highlight that because I could hit 60K in revenues. I feel like I need to stand up. Now I'm going to talk a little bit. We're going to stand. We're going to move. Hitting that 60K in revenues is great, but if you end up having 55K in expenses, then you haven't hit that 18K profit goal. So we don't want that. Hold on, I got to get my old lady cushion knee mat. Okay. So I focus on this profit number. So my goal for the year is 18K of profit. So that to me is the number that isn't fluid, because that's the number that I want to hit for probably a variety of reasons. It's the number I want to hit because it's the profit I want to be able to take home. It's the number I want to hit because it's the level I want my business to get to, all of these things, right? So that's the number that I'm going to be laser focused on anytime I'm considering making a change to my budget. So what I mean by that is, and I'm going to show you this in a few different ways. We're just going to play around with December just so that I don't have to keep scrolling back and forth. But let's just say that you're in a particular month and you get sick. You get sick and you're like, I can't work this month. And you're a service-based business, so you not working means you're probably not going to bring any money in. And let's say you don't have any kind of revenue source that's more passive that can work when you're not working, which something to think about for the future, but not for right now. So let's say you're like, you know what? I'm not going to hit this 5K. I'm just not. I'm not going to hit it. Maybe you think you're going to do 1,500. Okay. Now, all of a sudden, that's going to change your budget, right? So if we go over here to our annual budget, that brings that to 56.5. And we've dropped from the 18K to the 14,500, right? So when I'm doing this analysis, I'm going to be saying, okay, that dropped my profit $3,500. How can I adjust for that? I can do this in a couple of different ways. I can reduce some of my expenses. Maybe I say, you know what, if I'm not working this month, we're going to turn that advertising off. We're going to just shut that down. We don't need to have that this month. And maybe you're thinking, also, I'm not going to spend any money on supplies this month because I'm not going to be in the office. Don't need it. So you cut some expenses there. So now you're at 15.75. And so for the sake of everybody, I'll put the difference there. So now we've got to find another 22.50. Doesn't work as well if you're in December, but let's say this happens in April and you're thinking, okay, 22.50. Well, maybe if I spread that difference out over the next few months, and this requires me to do math, that over 8 months is about $280 a month. So maybe you're like, all right, I'm gonna be down $22.50 in April, but maybe I can set a goal of hitting another $280 every single month for May through December, so that I can get back to that 18,000 in profits that I want to get to. Does that make sense? So that's one of the ways that I'll adjust. I'll do the same thing if I decide to push a launch, or if I decide to, spread out a promo differently, or offer kind of different payment plan options that I was doing before. I will also do this on the flip side. If I decide to do a promo I wasn't planning on, I'll give you a great example. I wasn't planning on doing the affiliate promotion for Bobby Clink in August for his legal template library, but I did, made some money off of it. Cool. That helps my budget. Now, in this case, I didn't adjust my budget because I didn't feel like I needed to, and I wanted to just take the win of making extra money. But let's just say, I'm going to put my number back to 5,000 for a second. Let's restore my numbers here. Let's just say in November, we wanted to do 5,000 and we did 12,000. Woo! $12,000. Actually, I shouldn't put it in budget. I should put in actual. So we budgeted 5,000. We did 12,000. We're over 7,000 for the month, which is super exciting. Now what I might want to do, I can do a couple of things. I might say, I'm going to just enjoy my win. And I'm going to know that I'm now going to hit, let's see, what does that put our profits at? I'm now going to hit, my profits are, I messed up my numbers, but that's going to give me, what did I add? 7,000. That's going to give me an extra $7,000 of profit for the year before taxes, because it wasn't money I was expecting. So that's the first thing you can do. The second thing you could do, let's see, where am I? The second thing you could do is you could say, whew, that buys me some space. Maybe I'm going to dial back my goal a little bit in the next month because it'd be nice to take some time off. And I hadn't planned on it, but I just had this awesome month and I can do it. So then you could do that. You also might say, hey, I now have the money I need to get some new employees, or to invest in that software I've been eyeing, or buy that new computer. So maybe that's getting added to your budget. But these are all things that you can think about when you've got this budget tracker, and it allows you to really play around with the numbers. Now, another question I get asked a lot is, when do I know if I should adjust my budget column versus just changing the actual number? And my answer to this always is, so like, let me give you this example in case that question didn't make sense. If, let's say you have that $12,000 windfall of a month, do you adjust your November budget to be the $12,000, or do you just put the $12,000 in the actual column? And the answer is, if it's happening in the month you're in, then you just put it in the actual column. So in this example, we're in the middle of November, or maybe end of November. You've done the launch, you made 12,000, you thought you were going to make 5. You're not going to change your budget. You're going to just reflect that $12,000 in the actual column. When you change your budgeted column is when it's forward-looking. So again, let's use the same example. You made the 12,000, you thought you were going to make 5. That's going to allow you to hire somebody. So now what you're going to do is go into December and say, I'm going to hire another person. Let's bump my team up to $3,500. Future looking, forward looking gets the budget adjustment. currently happening, you're only adjusting actual. So hopefully that makes sense. Any questions on any of this stuff? We actually have plenty of time for questions. So because I don't really have much more to show you on this. There's a couple other things I could think of I could talk through, but I also don't want to throw too much at everyone. So let me know if y'all have any questions. Again, I'm trying to check both Facebook and YouTube. So let me know. And I also want to make sure this all makes sense. So if something doesn't make sense, please let me know too. And I saw a few folks popped in over the last few minutes. If you're just joining us, the link to the tracker, the budget tracker that we're looking at, the template, is in the comments of Facebook. Let me add it right now to the comments of YouTube because I did not have it there. If I'm smart enough to figure this out, I am. Okay. But let me know if y'all have any questions, because otherwise I'm close to being done. I guess one other thing I'll talk about, because this is a question that comes up a lot. And by the way, for folks who are just tuning in, I mentioned that I accidentally started putting my numbers into the tracker template that I've shared with you. So if you're watching live, just download it and delete the numbers. If you're watching on the replay, I will have already cleared out these numbers. But a question I get a lot is about this tax number. And I want to be very, very clear about this. This tax calculation in this template is very, very simple. This is very, very simple. It's not factoring in like 47 other things you need to factor in when you're doing your actual tax calculation. So this is not meant to be like your tax calculation for the year. This is just meant to be a quick back of the envelope, figure out what you should set aside for taxes. The other thing I want to mention about this is two things I want to mention about this is if you look at my formula here, you'll notice that it's calculating this percentage off of the profit before taxes, which is fine. That's correct. But it's not including any other income you have. So, if you have W-2 income or your spouse's income, it's not including any of that income. So this is just the tax amount for your business that it's calculating. The other thing it's not calculating is the fact that we have progressive tax rates here in the US, meaning the first so many thousands of dollars are taxed at 10%, then the next so many thousands are taxed at 12, then the next so many thousands are taxed at 15. This isn't factoring that in. This is taking one percentage, a flat percentage, and applying it against the entire profit. So when you're putting an amount in here, you want to be mindful about what percentage you're putting in here. And don't ask me because I can't tell you because it's different for every single person. The best way to figure out this amount, it's not the most accurate way, but it's the closest way, is to look at your most recent tax return and take your total tax liability your total taxable income divided by your total tax liability to get what we call your effective tax rate. And that's the number you'll put in here. And again, the purpose of this tax rate and little tax calculation here is solely to figure out how much you should set aside so that you have money in a separate bank account for your taxes. As you do your quarterly tax calculations, I hope you're doing those, and as you actually do your annual tax filings, you'll refine this percentage. And you may be over setting aside too much. You may be setting aside not enough. You'll refine this over time. But I wanted to point that out. And then the savings rate, you don't have to do a savings rate here if you want. This is built into the calculator or the budget calculator, so that if you want to set aside a certain percentage of your profits every month, you can. But you don't have to. You can easily just put it to 0. It's not going to do anything. Okay. The last point I want to make, and this confuses everybody, so don't feel bad if you're feeling confused by this, is just making sure we're good here. Yes, okay. Is a lot of times people will say, why does actually, I thought of two more things. Let me switch gears and answer the second question before I answer the one I was about to do. I get the question a lot from folks about how do they count for expenses they put on their credit card. So they use their credit card for the monthly business expenses and then pay it off. They say, where do I put the credit card payment in the budget tracker? For example purposes, let's just say you put $1,000 on your credit card every month and you pay $1,000 towards that credit card. My answer is you don't put the credit card payment in the budget tracker. This is not meant to be a cash flow tracker. We have one for that. This is not it. This is a budget tracker. So let's just say on your credit card, you put the $500 of office expenses, you put the $750 of advertising. You're going to put those in your budget as these separate categories, not as the credit card payment you're making. Does that make sense? So the budget is for the actual expenses, not the payments you're making to the credit card to pay for those expenses. That brings me to the question I was about to start answering, which is every once in a while, I will get folks who say, okay, this said that I would have $1,275 of cash left over, but I don't have $1,275 of cash. What the heck happened? And there's generally two reasons for that. The reason number one is you may have made a sale on the 30th and the funds didn't clear through Stripe and hit your bank account until the 3rd. And so when you're looking in your accounting system, that money would probably pop up as coming through your bank account on the 3rd. And so you may not have that reflected in the same place. Not something to stress about. The budget is not meant to be your accounting system. It's meant to just be your guide for what you have coming in and going out. The other reason why your cash might be off from your net profit number down here is because of the credit card thing I was talking about. If you put all of those expenses on a credit card, so let's say we put the advertising and the office supplies on the credit card in January, but we don't pay that bill till February, we're probably going to have more cash at the end of January than what number was it? Than the $1,275 because we haven't paid, what was it, $1,250? We haven't paid the $1,250 to the credit card yet. We're going to pay that in February. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Okay, I think that's all I have. We've got a few more minutes, so I don't want to just pop off unless folks have questions. I'm happy to stay for questions. If anyone has questions, I'm definitely going to give it a few seconds because I know there's a lag. So let me know if you have questions in the comments. If you've got a question, it's going to take you a little bit to write it out. Just type question really fast so that I know you've got a question and you don't want me to leave and I will wait. But otherwise, I would say just download this tracker, start using it. You can, I would start getting it set up for 2022. You could also, if you want some practice with it, you could actually use it to show your 2021 numbers per month. So if you're curious, like, I wonder what I did every single month in 2021, you could use this, you could populate it with your 2021 numbers just to see how stuff flowed through your business. And then you could use that, roll that over to 2022. So that's an option as well. But I would set a goal for folks of diving into this budget tracker, getting it set up for 2022. And I would set a goal of by the end of October. By the end of October, have it in really good shape. It doesn't mean it has to be the final answer, but have it in really good shape. And don't discount the value of using this tool as a planning tool for your promotions and when you're going to do stuff. This morning, I literally just mapped out on my calendar when I'm going to do, if you're a client, we have all these calls, when I'm going to do the Q1, 2, 3, 4 quarter calls, when I'm going to do the onboarding calls, when I'm going to, when I'm going to do your quarterly calculations, when I'm going to do your tax returns. I mapped all of that on my calendar. And the budget was a huge part of that, believe it or not, because I kept going back to the budget to say, what are the numbers we want to hit in 2022? How many people does that mean we have to bring on for each of the services? And as a result of that, what does that mean for how many calls I have to block off on my schedule? Or how many days of tax prep I have to block off? And when I do that too, because when those people sign up, that's when I have to deliver that service. So don't underestimate the value of the budget in your planning for 2022. Similarly, I've got a client, a CFO client, who does big launches, but because of that, timing and cash flow are things we really have to watch because she'll have a $200,000 launch, but she might not have much revenue for 4 months. So when we're sitting and doing her budget, we're looking at that. And as we're thinking about her promos, now it doesn't mean that we're going to have a launch in a month solely for cash flow reasons, but it does mean that if we know there's going to be a tighter stretch, we might look at getting, getting like a working capital loan to tide her over. We might look at setting aside enough cash from the prior launch to make sure she's got it for those months. We might look at the payment plans and how we set those up and how that affects future cash flow. So all of these pieces can be really, really important in figuring out your 2022 plan. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm going to stop talking, especially because my voice is starting to get sore, believe it or not. Hopefully this was helpful. We will be having, as a reminder to everyone, if you didn't see the email, I think we're going to do another email about it as well. Because of very high demand for the money meeting sessions, we are switching things up. So we're not going to have 2 Q&As every month. We're going to only have one. We're going to replace the other Q&A with a money meeting. So next week, money meeting. Week after Q&A, week after money meeting. So now you'll have 2 money meeting sessions a month, 1 Q&A. You're so welcome, Mackenzie. Thank you for being here. And thanks to everyone else who is here as well. I know we had a bunch of other folks here who just weren't commenting as much, which is totally fine. You don't have to talk. You can just sit and watch. But just keep that in mind. 2 money meeting sessions. So one next week, one on the 4th week of the month. And then just 1 Q&A. And so the money meetings, if you haven't been, are a great time to just come. We'll work through your numbers. You can ask questions. It's a good time to go a little bit deeper into your numbers, whereas the Q&A is a great time to ask questions that don't necessarily require us to go into your accounting system or, dive into your budget, for example. But the budget, if you're working on your budgets, great thing to bring to the money meeting and ask me questions next week if you have any. So all right, friends, I'm going to leave it there. I will see you all at our money meeting session next week, and I hope you have a great weekend. Bye.